The arena roared with laughter. Thousands of alien voices, a chaotic symphony of clicks, whistles, and growls echoed against cold steel walls. The main gate hissed open, bathed in the harsh glare of the stadium lights, and the galaxy's weakest-looking fighter stepped onto the blood-soaked sand. A human. He was unarmored, unaugmented, utterly unimpressive. All around the colossal stadium, the betting screens flickered, displaying the consensus. Comedy match, low odds, quick death expected. The text was practically dripping with condescending certainty. From high in the stands, a voice, amplified by sheer enthusiasm, shouted, "Make him dance before he dies!" The taunt was met with a fresh wave of derisive laughter. The human didn't respond. He didn't acknowledge the crowd, the noise, or the palpable disdain. He just rolled his shoulders, a simple, fluid motion, and took a deep, steady breath. His name was Evan Rourke. He was of average height for his species, with lean, compact muscle built more for endurance than for spectacle. His brown hair was cut short, a utilitarian style with no pretense. His face bore no scars worth boasting about. Just a few old, faded lines that spoke of survival, not glory. They had dressed him deliberately wrong, a cruel joke for the masses. His combat trousers were loose, 2 sizes too big, and held up by a crude synth cord. The thin synth fiber shirt he wore was already torn at the shoulder, revealing pale, unarmored skin. No armor plates, no energy shield generator, bare hands, bare feet. To the roaring crowd, he looked unfinished, a piece of meat thrown into the ring by mistake. To the slavers who had sold him to the arena masters, he was the punchline to a very profitable joke. But Evan wasn't looking at the crowd. He was scanning the arena, his eyes steady, his jaw set. He didn't glare. He didn't posture. He measured. He calculated distances, noted the texture of the sand, the positions of the other gates. That quiet, analytical focus more than anything seemed to unsettle the announcer, whose booming voice faltered for just a moment. The first gate on the far side of the arena slammed open with a deafening clang. A Grakar brute thundered into the arena, a mountain of muscle and fury. It stood 3 meters tall, with 4 powerful arms and thick bone plating that had grown naturally along its spine and forearms. It let out a deafening roar and beat its massive chest, a primal display that sent the crowd into a frenzy of screams and approval. The announcer, recovering his composure, laughed into his microphone. "Behold, spectators, the human's first and final lesson in galactic brutality." The Grakar charged. It was a blur of motion, a living battering ram. To the onlookers, Evan seemed to move too late, his reaction time laughably slow. The brute smashed into him, not with a fist, but with its shoulder, tossing him aside like a piece of debris. The impact sent a shocking jolt through Evan's body. He felt at least 2 ribs crack. He landed hard, and the sand, tasting of iron and alien blood, filled his mouth. The crowd howled its approval. "Again," someone shrieked, "break him!" The Grakar, basking in the adoration, lumbered over to where Evan lay. It wrapped one of its massive 4-fingered hands around his torso, lifted him effortlessly into the air, and slammed him down again. Something else in his body snapped. A scream was torn from Evan's throat, a raw, sharp sound of pure agony. But then he rolled. He didn't stay down. He used the momentum of the impact to move, to create space. He learned. The next time the Grakar charged, Evan was already moving, not trying to dodge completely, but to lessen the blow. The charge clipped him instead of crushing him. The next wild swing bruised instead of breaking. Pain was a constant screaming signal, but beneath it a different process was running. Evan watched the beast's patterns. He counted its breaths between roars. He measured the reach of its forearms. When the Grakar, growing frustrated by its smaller, more agile target, reared back and let out a roar of pure anger, Evan saw his opening. As the brute lunged, he didn't run. He moved in. In a flash, he drove the stiffened fingers of his right hand deep into a joint gap just below the creature's massive shoulder. With every ounce of strength he had left, he twisted. A sickening snap echoed in the momentary lull, a sound not of flesh but of thick, load-bearing bone. A half-second of stunned silence fell over the arena. The Grakar's roar turned into a wet gurgle. Its eyes went wide with shock and pain. Then the colossal creature collapsed, its limbs folding beneath it. The kill bell rang, its chime sounding strangely hollow in the vast space. The laughter from the stands was thinner now, quieter. Medics, looking nervous, rushed into the sand and dragged Evan back to his feet. Blood ran in a steady stream down his side from a deep gash. One of his arms hung stiffly, useless. He waved the medics off, his jaw clenched tight against the pain. He would stand on his own. The next gate opened, and a Siluran blademaster entered. This opponent was the opposite of the first, fast, elegant, armed with twin energy scythes that hummed with lethal power. "This next match will surely be educational," the announcer said, forcing a humorous tone that no one seemed to buy. Evan lost the first exchange badly. A shimmering blade carved a deep line into his thigh. Another burned a searing path across his ribs. The pain flared white-hot, threatening to overwhelm him. But then, something inside him shifted. His brain, flooded with agony, started rerouting, adapting. He began to anticipate the Siluran's fluid movements. He shortened his stance, planting his feet firmly in the sand. He adjusted his footwork, making smaller, more efficient movements. He began using the pain as a signal, not a limit. It told him where he was weak, where he was exposed. When the Siluran lunged again, aiming for a finishing blow, Evan did something insane. He let the blade slice into him. A shallow cut across his shoulder, just enough to use the weapon's momentum to pull the alien off balance. In that single critical moment of instability, Evan lunged forward. He grabbed the wrist holding the scythe, and with a guttural yell, he drove his forehead into the Siluran's delicate bird-like skull. The crunch was sickeningly final. The crowd didn't cheer. They just watched. The Siluran fell, dead. Whispers began to replace the mockery. A low murmur spread through the stands. "What is he?" one alien asked another. "Why isn't he slowing down?" By all rights, Evan shouldn't have been standing. He was bleeding from multiple wounds. He was limping heavily. One of his eyes was swollen shut, but his breathing, though ragged, was steady, controlled. The arena masters, watching from their private box, seemed to confer. They decided to up the stakes. The third opponent entered, a Threxian juggernaut, a horrifying fusion of flesh and steel. It was cybernetically reinforced, its movements heavy but unstoppable. Its pain receptors had been surgically dulled. It was a walking tank. Evan didn't see a monster. He studied it like a puzzle. The first hit, a piston-driven fist, shattered his collarbone. The pain was blinding. The second blow should have ended it. It sent him flying across the sand. Instead, Evan adapted. He stopped trying to meet force with force. He stopped trying to overpower. He started targeting vulnerabilities. He dodged and weaved, not to escape, but to get closer. He slammed his elbow into exposed hydraulic cables. He kicked at armored joints until they buckled. He targeted cooling vents along the creature's back. He used the environment, scooping sand into its optical sensors, using a piece of debris from the last fight as a crude club. Pain piled up. So did his understanding. When the juggernaut systems finally overheated and it collapsed in a shower of sparks and steam, the arena was utterly silent. Not shocked, recalculating. The tide had turned. Respect, raw and undeniable, was being forced upon them. The announcer's voice, when it finally came, trembled. This was not expected. Evan stood alone in the center of the arena, his chest rising and falling in ragged, painful breaths. He didn't raise his arms in victory. He didn't celebrate. He just looked up past the thousands of silent spectators directly at the owner's box high above. And they saw it then. It wasn't rage in his one good eye. It wasn't defiance. It was resolve. Cold, hard, and absolute. They had no choice. They sent in their champion, the arena crown, an undefeated warrior for 12 straight cycles, a legend. The champion was a towering insectoid creature, renowned for its speed, strength, and merciless tactics. It entered the arena to a silence that was more terrifying than any roar. It gave Evan a mocking, formal bow. To everyone's surprise, Evan, broken and bleeding, returned the gesture. The fight was brutal. Evan was slower now, so much slower. He was hurt, running on nothing but stubborn will and muscle memory. He took hit after hit, each one carving away something he didn't need: pride, fear, the luxury of a painless breath. But as the champion began to tire, Evan did not. Humans, the galaxy was learning far too late, were endurance predators. They were built to outlast, to wear down their prey, to just keep going. The final blow wasn't flashy. It wasn't a grand cinematic moment. It was just precise. A tired parry from the champion, an opening the size of a fist, and a desperate final strike from Evan. The champion fell. The arena bell rang one last time. No one cheered. They stood, in silence, in awe. Later in the med bay, a handler approached Evan's bedside. Her voice was a shaking whisper. "They sold you as a joke." Evan, his body a canvas of pain, closed his eyes. "Yeah," he said, his voice hoarse and cracked. "I noticed." Across the galaxy, the news spread like a shockwave. Arena masters quietly, urgently removed humans from their fight rosters, not out of mercy, out of fear. Because the lesson had been learned, etched into the memory of every spectator who was there that day. Humans don't win because they are the strongest, or the fastest, or the most technologically advanced. They win because they learn faster than pain can stop them. They win because when everything is gone, they still have the will to take one more step, to throw one more punch, and once the arena went silent, it never laughed at a human again. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content just like this. See you next time.